The waiter flinched when she said it. That's how I know I didn't imagine it. He had just refilled her wine glass. His hand jerked slightly, and a few drops splashed onto the linen tablecloth. He apologized, dabbed at it with a cloth, then gave me a look. Not pity, not shock, just the awkward glance you give someone when you've heard something you weren't supposed to hear. She didn't even notice. She just sipped her Merlot and stared out the window like she was watching boats, not burning bridges. Here's the exact sentence, word for word. If you had died in that accident last year, I think I would have been okay by now. That's what she said, right between bites of duck confit and small talk about the neighbor's new landscaping. Let me back up. No, not too far. Don't worry, I won't bore you with how we met or how magical it once was. That's irrelevant now. What matters is this. I didn't die in that accident last year, but I almost did. I was hit by a driver who ran a red light at 53 miles per hour. I spent 11 days in the ICU. My ribs were broken like splintered firewood. Breathing felt like dragging glass through my lungs. They had to cut my wedding ring off because my hands were so swollen, they thought I might lose a finger. She cried at the hospital. She brought flowers. She read books out loud when I was too drugged to stay awake. And apparently, she also imagined her life if I hadn't survived. She calculated her grief, processed her freedom, accepted a version of reality where I was just a folded flag and a memory. And now, months later, at a restaurant I picked to celebrate my second chance at life, she tells me she would have been fine. Not devastated, not haunted, just fine. I didn't say a word. I didn't ask her why she said it. I didn't demand context. I just stood up, placed my napkin on the plate, and walked out of the restaurant, past the stunned waiter, past the host who smiled at me when we walked in, past the candlelight and jazz and soft conversations of people still pretending. I got in my car. I drove. And I didn't cry. I just kept repeating the sentence in my head. I would have been okay by now. I didn't know it yet, but that sentence was a crack in the dam. Because over the next few days, I would uncover why she said it. And the answer? It has nothing to do with grief. And everything to do with what she did while I was unconscious in that hospital bed. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the sentence over and over. I would have been okay by now. Not devastated. Not broken. Just okay. Like I was some temporary burden she had finally trained herself to carry. My phone buzzed twice around midnight. Once was from my bank, confirming a new password change I didn't request. The other was from Mallory. A single message. I didn't mean it like that. No punctuation. No emotion. No explanation. I didn't reply. By sunrise, I was still in the same position. Eyes open. Blanket untouched. I couldn't stop thinking about how confident she sounded. How easily it rolled off her tongue. Like it was a thought she'd repeated to herself dozens of times before. Not something she blurted out. Something she had decided. It's strange what your brain does in moments like that. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I just felt curious. What else had she been quietly processing? What else had she let herself feel without telling me? I wasn't about to snoop through her purse or tail her car. I'm not built for that kind of drama. But I did still have access to our shared laptop. The one we used to plan trips, organize bills, and write Christmas letters that made our lives seem warmer than they were. She'd left it on the desk in our guest room. The screen was dimmed, not off. I touched the trackpad, and it flickered back to life. No password. No hesitation. I didn't even need to dig. The clues were waiting like they wanted to be found. In the Notes app, buried between grocery lists and skincare routines, was a folder labeled Unsent. Inside it, 7 drafts. Each one a letter addressed to me. Each one written on different days between my accident and the weeks after I came home from the hospital. They started soft. The first was dated 3 days after the crash. I don't know if I should say this out loud, but I feel numb. The idea of him being gone doesn't feel as terrifying as I thought it would. The second one, colder. I keep thinking how different my life could be. No more waiting. No more compromises. Just space. By the 4th letter, dated 2 days after I was discharged, she didn't even try to sound conflicted anymore. He survived, and now I feel stuck. Again, I smiled when he came home, but I felt like the walls were closing in. It's not that I want him dead. I just wish he'd stayed in a coma long enough for me to figure out who I am without him. I stared at the screen for I don't know how long. Reading, rereading, searching for some trace of guilt. Some line that hinted at regret or confusion. But there was none. Just cold clarity. She had been drafting a new life in her head while I was learning how to walk again. And then I found the last note, the most recent one. No title, just a single sentence saved on a random Tuesday at 2:14 p.m. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell him. Tell me what? That she never wanted this life? That she'd rather be widowed than be my wife? Or something worse? Because here's the thing. That note was dated the day before our dinner. The night she said the sentence. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't a stray thought. It was rehearsed. And the next day, at dinner, she followed through, calm, calculated, like a woman checking something off her to-do list. Now I wasn't just hurt. I was scared. Because if she had planned to say it, what else had she planned? The weirdest part? The silence. You'd think after walking out like that, standing up in the middle of a sentence and leaving without a word, there'd be yelling, calls, texts, begging, threats, something. But there was nothing. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even a "where are you?" or "can we talk?" Just complete, suffocating silence. And the more it dragged on, the more it started to feel intentional. I sat in my car in the parking lot of an abandoned pharmacy until nearly 3 a.m. I don't know why I picked that spot. Maybe because I used to go there for my post-surgery meds. Maybe because no one would find me there. The streetlight above me kept flickering every 15 seconds, like it was struggling to decide whether to stay alive or give up entirely. Kind of poetic, now that I think about it. I kept replaying her sentence in my head, not because it shocked me. That part had already numbed over. But because of how she said it. Not like she was sorry. Not like she slipped. More like she'd practiced. Like she had rehearsed the line, over and over, until it sounded casual enough to slide between a bite of duck and a refill of wine. By sunrise, I hadn't slept. I hadn't gone home. I just drove. No destination, no plan. Just me, the road, and the question scratching at the inside of my skull like a trapped animal. Had she always felt this way? Or was this something new she discovered while I was laid out in a hospital bed? Back at the house, her car was gone. The lights were off. I let myself in quietly, half expecting some kind of letter on the table. Nothing. I walked through the house like a stranger. It's funny how quickly your own furniture stops feeling like yours. The coffee mug I always used had been washed and stacked wrong in the cupboard. My hoodie, the one she always wore when she was cold, was now folded in the laundry basket with her things, not mine. Like the house was gently erasing me. I ended up in the office. We shared the space, but really it was hers. She liked keeping notes, actual paper notes, in these little leather notebooks she hoarded from discount shops. I wasn't planning to snoop, but I also wasn't planning to find what I did. Inside the top drawer was one of her notebooks. Most of it was boring, grocery lists, sketches, ideas for redoing the backyard. But wedged between pages 72 and 73 was a folded sheet of paper with 2 words written in the middle in sharp, slanted handwriting. Trial separation. No date. No context. No explanation. Just those words, sitting in ink like a loaded gun. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a threat. It was a label, like the heading of a future conversation. The beginning of a life decision she was warming up to. A bookmark in her private monologue. And that's when I realized I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being dramatic. She hadn't accidentally said what she said at dinner. It wasn't emotional whiplash or passive aggression or a poor choice of words. It was a strategy. She'd been preparing, mapping it out quietly, like a slow-moving storm system gathering over months. And I was the idiot checking the weather app and wondering why the sky looked weird. Still no calls. No texts. Nothing. And somehow, that was worse than if she'd yelled at me. I sat down in her office chair, stared at the paper, and thought, what else is she ready to say out loud that she hasn't yet? I wanted to believe that was the worst of it. But the next night, I found something in our shared email inbox that made my blood run cold. Something with a subject line that simply read, "Next steps." And no, it wasn't from a therapist. The inbox wasn't even supposed to exist anymore. We'd made it 5 years ago when we were planning a trip to Oregon. Shared logins, Google Docs, packing lists, maps of breweries. When we got back, we forgot about it. Eventually, I cleared my half of the emails, and we never used it again. At least, that's what I thought. But I still had the password saved in my browser, and something about the phrase trial separation sitting quietly in her notebook like a planted landmine made me want to check everything. Even things I knew were probably dead ends. I logged in. 5 unread messages. 4 were spam. The 5th wasn't. Subject line, next steps. The sender's name wasn't familiar, Nina Elrich. The message was only a few sentences long. No greeting. No signature. Just direct, cold, like this wasn't the first exchange between them. He's emotionally dependent and predictable. You won't need to justify much. Just remind him he's fragile and give him time to come to the conclusion himself. He'll make it easy for you. Just stay consistent and let him feel the silence. I read it 3 times. Then I read it out loud, like maybe hearing it in the room would make it less insane. He's emotionally dependent, predictable, fragile. Make it easy. My heart started racing in a way that felt unnatural, like it was trying to outrun something inside my chest. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I felt profiled, like a case study, like someone had dissected my mind and handed her the instruction manual. Who the hell was Nina Elrich? I copied the name, opened a new tab, and started digging. LinkedIn, Instagram, old school directories. It took about 20 minutes, but I found her. Life coach, conflict mediator, relationship transition strategist. Whatever the hell that means. Her website had soft pastel colors and words like emotional recalibration and codependence detox. Her bio was full of empty phrases that sounded like they were pulled from a scrambled TED Talk. But there was a testimonials page. And there, in plain view, was Mallory's name. Nina helped me realize I'd been performing a version of love instead of living it. She showed me how to detach without cruelty. I didn't need permission to leave, just clarity. Mallory H. That's when the timeline started snapping into place. While I was healing, while I was learning to bend my knees again, while I was lying on the floor doing breathing exercises and trying not to scream from nerve pain, she was strategizing an exit, not just thinking about it, planning it, with help, with emails, with scripts. I closed the laptop so fast it nearly cracked. I couldn't sit still. I walked around the house, our house, suddenly noticing everything she had touched. The pictures on the wall, all curated to make us look effortless. The mug she chose, the throw pillows she insisted on. I felt surrounded by a life that had been staged for someone else's comfort. What haunted me most wasn't that she was ready to leave. It was that she wanted me to be the one who opened the door for her. She wanted me to think it was my idea, so she could walk away clean, unburdened, blameless. Just a woman who tried, who cared, who stayed until he was strong enough to let her go. It was psychological euthanasia, and I was supposed to smile through it. I don't remember falling asleep that night. I don't even remember lying down. I just remember waking up the next morning on the living room floor with my phone buzzing in my pocket. A text from Mallory. We should probably talk soon. No punctuation, just like before. But this time, I had questions. And for once, I wasn't afraid to ask them. The email sat there like a landmine, disguised as junk mail. I hovered over it for a full minute before I clicked. Next steps. 2 words. Harmless, generic. Could have been a newsletter or spam. But it wasn't. It was an emotional hit and run. It wasn't from a lawyer or therapist. It wasn't even from Mallory. The sender was someone I'd never heard of, Nina Elrich. No context, no attachments, just a short, sharp message that read more like a strategy guide than anything remotely human. He's emotionally dependent and predictable. You won't need to justify much. Just remind him he's fragile and give him time to come to the conclusion himself. He'll make it easy for you. Just stay consistent and let him feel the silence. I read it once, twice, a third time slower. I don't know what was more disturbing, the cold way it was written or how accurate it was. Emotionally dependent, predictable, fragile. It was like someone had reverse engineered my personality without ever meeting me. I searched the name. LinkedIn popped up first, conflict recovery coach, whatever the hell that means. Then came her website, all soft colors and vague empowerment slogans. Helping women detach from codependent dynamics. Reclaim your narrative. Stop performing your marriage. I wanted to throw my laptop out the window, because it wasn't just coaching. It was a quiet assassination. And my wife, the woman who once sat by my hospital bed and fed me iced chips while whispering how scared she was to lose me, had been working with this woman to manufacture a clean exit. Not divorce. Not drama. Something worse. She wanted me to leave. To unravel myself. To make it easy for her to say, I tried, but he just couldn't hold on. And God help me, she knew it might work. Because after reading that message, I started doubting myself. I really did. I started wondering if I was too dependent, if I'd smothered her during my recovery, if my fear of being alone made me an emotional liability. She planted the seed, and Nina had handed her the watering can. But here's where it got worse. Because I dug deeper. I searched our email inbox for any other messages from Nina. At first, nothing. Then I remembered that Mallory sometimes forwarded things to herself with shorthand subject lines. I typed "NE" into the search bar, and there it was. An email from a few weeks ago, forwarded from Mallory's personal account. The original message had been from Nina. The subject? If he asks about the timeline. That was all I needed to see. Because suddenly I realized something I had completely missed in my shock, something obvious and devastating. Mallory's dinner confession wasn't just cold. It was timed. It came exactly 1 year after the accident. To the day. Same restaurant. Same table. A full-circle reenactment. And now I understood why she made the reservation seem like my idea. Why she let me talk, let me ramble about second chances and love, and how far we've come. She wanted the contrast. She wanted impact. She wanted me to remember it as the moment she told the truth, the way she rehearsed it, not the way it actually happened. I leaned back in the chair, heart pounding, and suddenly every memory of the last year felt unreliable. Like I had been living inside someone else's carefully edited movie. I thought I was healing, rebuilding. I thought we were quietly surviving together. But the whole time, she was just waiting me out. And now, she was done waiting. She asked to meet at the park near the duck pond. The one we used to walk through before she started using "work late" as a default setting. I said yes, though every part of me wanted to scream. I guess I needed to see her face. I needed to confirm she could still look me in the eye after what I'd read. I arrived 10 minutes early. She arrived 10 minutes late. The first thing I noticed was that she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. I don't know why that hit me so hard. I hadn't even looked at mine in days. But on her, it felt like absence had weight. She sat beside me on the bench like we were old friends, like nothing had happened, like this was just some casual update over coffee. There was no guilt in her body language. No tension, just her perfectly composed self. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, not even waiting for a greeting. "I just can't lie anymore." I didn't speak. I wanted her to keep going. People say more when you give them silence. I thought maybe I could grow back into it. She continued, like our marriage was a jacket that shrunk in the wash. After the accident, there was this strange hope that we'd start fresh. You were so grateful, so gentle, and I was too tired to be honest. Too tired to be honest. It felt like every word she said came pre-approved by her coach. Polished phrases, emotional safety nets. No stutters, no rawness. Just controlled vulnerability. It was infuriating. "I've been trying to find the right time to say it," she added. That dinner felt like closure. Closure for who? I finally asked, and even I was surprised by how hoarse my voice sounded. She paused for the first time, looked down at her hands, then straight ahead again. For both of us. That's when I realized she wasn't here to talk. She was here to narrate the ending. Mallory didn't want a conversation. She wanted a monologue. One where she got to play the honest, wounded protagonist, and I was just an old chapter she had to read out loud before turning the page. "I didn't plan to say that sentence," she added. A lie so cleanly delivered it nearly fooled me. It just came out. I smiled. For the first time in days. Because I finally saw it. The game. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't explosive. She was calculated. She wanted the ending to be so civilized, so calm, that I couldn't even claim she'd done anything wrong. It wasn't betrayal in the traditional sense. It was emotional euthanasia, slow, sterile, and dressed in soft words. She didn't stab the marriage. She smothered it with a pillow while humming a lullaby. And I was supposed to thank her for it. "Are you seeing someone?" I asked. Not because I wanted to know, but because I wanted to see her blink. She didn't. "No, that's not what this is about." She said it too quickly, and she didn't look at me when she said it. I didn't push. I didn't argue. I just nodded like I accepted it. Like I hadn't already seen a new contact in her phone last week labeled Tessa, a name she once used as a fake alias for social media accounts she didn't want tracked. The rest of the conversation was quiet. She offered clarity. I gave her my silence. And when it ended, she stood up, touched my shoulder like she was blessing me, and walked away down the path without turning back. But here's the thing. She thought the story was over. She thought she'd wrapped it up in a bow and handed me peace. But the second I got home, I opened her old laptop. And what I found hidden inside a folder named Budget Drafts wasn't financial documents. It was recordings, audio files, every coaching session she'd had with Nina, saved, labeled, and archived. She hadn't just prepared for this breakup. She had rehearsed it like a performance. And I was no longer the audience. I was going to be the narrator. I don't know what I expected when I hit play. Maybe soft voice therapy talk, buzzwords, gentle affirmations. I didn't think it would hurt. I thought I was already numb. I thought I'd seen the worst. I was wrong. The first file was titled March Prep. Wave. It started with light background noise, coffee cup, maybe the rustling of a coat. And then Nina's voice came through, calm and practiced, like someone who'd turned human pain into a business model. Okay, Mallory, what outcome are you hoping for from this next step? And then I heard her. Mallory, my wife's voice. Steady, collected, like she was talking about switching phone plans, not dismantling our marriage. I want to be done by June, she said. That was 3 months before the dinner. I think if I can keep reinforcing the idea that he's emotionally worn out, he'll just surrender. He always does. He's passive. He internalizes. If I give him silence, he makes up a story to explain it, usually one that blames himself. I paused the audio. My hand was shaking. She didn't sound cruel. She sounded clinical, like she'd done this before, like she'd studied me. I sat in the dim light of the guest room, the blue glow of the laptop painting the walls like a crime scene. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to punch a wall like a man who still believed that rage could fix things. But I didn't. Because even now, even with that knife of a sentence still ringing in my ears, some stupid part of me wanted to hear the rest. I hit play again. Nina asked her what she feared most. Mallory's answer? That he'll call me out. That he'll see through it before I'm ready to leave. He's smart in this really inconvenient, slow-burning way. He pieces things together late, but completely. She laughed. They both laughed. And I think that was the moment I actually felt the ground shift beneath me. Not the affair. There wasn't one, as far as I knew. Not the emails or the manipulation. It was the laughter. Like I was a problem to be solved. Like my grief, my confusion, my desperate clinging to a broken version of us was funny. I listened to 3 more sessions, each one colder than the last. She talked about our routines like they were traps. She described my affection like it was pity she had to endure. At one point, she even referred to our marriage as a voluntary performance of stability, like she was acting in a role she had outgrown. But then, in the 4th file, the one just labeled mid-May session, something shifted. Mallory hesitated. Her voice cracked, just barely. There's one thing I haven't told him, she said. Nina asked, do you want to say it out loud here first? There was a long pause. And then Mallory whispered, I don't think the accident was an accident. My stomach dropped. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Nina pressed her gently. You mean you think he? No, Mallory interrupted. Not like that. I had the car the day before. I was distracted. I was texting. I noticed the brakes felt soft, but I didn't say anything. I figured he'd be fine. I didn't think he'd be driving far. And then, she trailed off. And Nina didn't ask again. The rest of the session was quiet, hesitant, like they both knew they'd brushed up against something dangerous. Like they needed to steer the conversation away before it bled. I sat frozen, hands clenched in fists so tight they left nail marks in my palms. She'd never told me that. Never mentioned the brakes. Never said she had the car last. Never once hinted that maybe, just maybe, my trauma wasn't entirely accidental. I thought she was a coward. But now I wondered if she was something else entirely. And in that moment, listening to her voice echo through that dusty guest room, I realized something chilling. She hadn't just wanted out of the marriage. She wanted out of everything, clean, silent, and consequence-free. And I was starting to think she didn't care what it took to make that happen. I didn't confront her. Not with the recordings, not with the emails, not even with the comment about the brakes. That surprised even me. I always thought the right thing was to confront, to speak up, to demand explanations. But at some point, maybe around the 3rd time I heard her say I was emotionally predictable, I realized I didn't need answers from her anymore. What I needed was distance. So I gave her what she wanted. I disappeared. Not in the dramatic movie way. No suitcases in the rain, no shouting matches, no last-minute speeches. I started with small things. I moved the money into a separate account, one with no shared access. I canceled the couple's gym membership. I forwarded my mail to a rented P.O. box. Then I quietly signed a lease 2 towns over. A modest place. Nothing fancy. Clean walls. Quiet neighbors. And finally, I left the house. One note on the kitchen counter. You win. You're free. So am I. That was it. No emotion. No signature. I didn't even wait to see her reaction. I drove away and didn't look in the rearview mirror once. The first night in the new apartment was strange. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was wide. Open. I slept on the floor because the mattress hadn't been delivered yet, but I slept hard. For the first time in months, I didn't dream about seatbelts snapping or voices saying things they couldn't take back. I didn't hear from her for a week. Then came the email. Just a single line. I thought you'd beg. I didn't reply. Because I wasn't playing anymore. Because healing doesn't always come with closure. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away before you understand everything. But that's not the ending. Not the real one. The real ending came a few months later. I was sitting in a local bookstore, one of those little secondhand places that smells like old pages and dust, flipping through a book on trauma recovery. Not because I needed more pain, but because I wanted to understand the part of me that had allowed it for so long. A woman sat beside me at the community table. Brown hair, glasses, hoodie with paint stains. She didn't look at me, just pulled out her own book. But after 10 minutes of mutual silence, she looked over and said, "That chapter sucks. The next one's better." We talked for 45 minutes. About the book, then music, then her dog, then my ridiculous coffee order. She didn't ask about my past. She didn't pry. She just smiled in this quiet, almost invisible way, like someone who understood that some people have been cracked open before and they're still learning how to hold their own shape. We didn't fall in love that day, but I left with her number. And this quiet thing in my chest, something like hope, or maybe just the absence of fear. I still carry the scars. Emotional ones, mental ones, maybe forever. But I'm not broken anymore. I'm not dependent. I'm not predictable. I'm just me. And for the first time in a long time, that's enough.